The goal of Millions Learning is to catalyze a discussion based on new evidence and insight around what needs to be done to scale quality education more quickly in low and middle income countries. In our study, we found that scaling quality learning can be organized around 4 main areas: designing, delivering, financing, and creating the enabling environment for scaling. Within these 4 areas, we found a number of core ingredients that in different combinations, depending on the context, contribute to scaling up quality education. Design. Improving learning at scale starts with committed leaders designing for scale from the start. What does this mean? We identified a number of core ingredients.
One of the core components we found is around local education needs, that interventions should be based on local demand, ensuring participation of community from the start and building in local accountability. It also means designing with cost effectiveness in mind. The cost structure should be affordable at scale for whoever is taking it up, governments or parents. Too often we find the gold-plated pilot designed only for effectiveness and not for the efficiencies that are required at scale. Another core ingredient we found was this notion of flexible adaptation, that there appeared to be this sweet spot between wholesale replication and costly customization, a balance between core components that should be replicated across contexts, while much of the other aspects were adapted to the local context. An example here is Sesame Workshop, the largest informal educator of young children, reaching more than 100 million children in more than 150 countries today. In each of the countries where Sesame is filmed, each country's co-productions share the universal style, a target age group, children 3 to 5, and focusing on the whole child, but then leaves it to the local production teams in each of those countries to develop programs based on children's needs and national education goals.
Delivery. It's not enough to just design for scale. Improving learning at scale requires attention to the operational realities of implementing at large scale. This includes a combination of both political and technical strategies.
One of those core ingredients is around education alliances. While partnerships are certainly difficult and not always effective, across the cases we looked at, they were fundamental in bringing together the range of skills and resources needed. World Reader, which is digitizing linguistically and culturally appropriate books on low-cost e-readers and mobile phone apps, and reaching more than 5 million readers in 52 countries around the world, focuses its efforts on partners with shared and aligned interests in developing what it refers to as an ecosystem of reading. Government officials, teachers, local publishers, those that are interested in expanding both the market and ensuring that more children are reading. Another core ingredient was leadership. Scaling takes learning champions and leaders within and outside the government and classroom. Visionary leaders to create or lead an initiative, champions with the political will and capital to both scale and sustain an idea, and certainly local leaders, teachers, parents, community members whose everyday efforts are contributing to more children learning. And finally, the core ingredient of data. Data was central to motivate, inform, and sustain action at a policy and practice level. Data in a number of different forms. Data to demonstrate to policymakers the urgency of an issue, as well as that change is possible. Data to also inform the design and delivery. We know that scaling is not a linear process, but it's an iterative process, and that data was essential to continuously drive improvements. Pratham, one of the largest education NGOs in India, found a key to the success of its remedial education program was its emphasis on experimentation and learning. Pratham combines field-level experience with rigorous evidence to inform its strategy.
Finance.
Scaling certainly takes resources, and it's often as much about how those resources are structured and allocated as absolute amounts. Domestic funding clearly is needed to scale and sustain any education initiative. But external support also plays an important role in terms of financial, technical, in-kind, particularly in the early days of an education innovation. We found a core ingredient being flexible financing, the stability and flexibility of financing necessary for scale to lead to lasting change. This includes investments in building core operational capacity, sometimes known as overhead, which can be difficult to fund, but which is critical to invest in systems such as human resources, monitoring and evaluation, and digitizing systems. And finally, the core ingredient of middle phase financing. Financing to bridge between the pilot stage and implementation at a national level. This is a period that's sometimes referred to as the Valley of Death, where many good innovations end up. And crossing this valley requires more clarity, coordination, and segmentation of who finances along the scaling cycle.
Enabling environment.
None of this happens in a vacuum. The environment plays a critical role in facilitating or impeding scale. We found that a supportive policy environment was key for good ideas to flourish. An environment where the government has the primary duty to ensure the right to education for all, while providing a platform for a multiplicity of actors to be involved in the provision or financing of education. An alternative secondary education program for rural youth in Latin America, known by the acronym SAT. In the case of Honduras, the government pays the salaries of the teachers, the largest recurrent costs, but allows an NGO, Asociación Bayan, to manage and implement the alternative secondary education program. A final core ingredient is promoting a culture of research and development in education at all levels. This requires greater investments in both basic and applied research, more appetite for risk-taking and honestly reporting failures, and the ability to make course corrections, feeding data back into the system.
Our hope is that Millions Learning contributes to ongoing efforts to ensure that children all over the world are learning the knowledge and skills needed to lead healthy, safe, and productive lives.